I'm going to jump to one topic. And if you want to go back to advertising and talk, we can, but we've got about 10 minutes left until the top of the hour. And I want to make sure we cover this in the first hour. And then for those that want to stay around, I have a couple of other topics if people want to continue to listen. I want to cover the topic that a couple people brought up at the beginning. I know Don brought it up about the billions of dollars that have rolled into the space. So over the past few weeks, over the last month, over this last year, we've seen millions, if not billions of dollars roll into the space. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of it's debt, right? It's not necessarily free cash. They're just getting access to money. But the goal of that is for them to buy and consolidate Amazon businesses. So what does that mean for 2021? Is 2021 the year to sell your business? What's going to happen to business valuations with all this cash in the market? If a brand needs to access capital, what are their options if you want to position yourself and take advantage of this? And Don, since you brought this up during your predictions, I'll let you kind of start this off and we'll run with this topic for a little bit.
You're the man, Jeff. So, what I see is that these, there's a lot of money coming in. You're going to see multiples going up over the next few years. So if I was, a seller and thinking about selling, I would probably try to push that off a year or two so that the margins, the multiples go up. I'd, get the capital. You have big opportunity in front of you right now. There's no question about it. And the question that I have is, I don't know how long that opportunity is going to be there, whether it's going to be there for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. But one thing from running and building many businesses, I know one thing for sure, it will change. So who's ever out there thinking that whatever the market...
2-3 years ago, there was another whole group of companies that were all out trying to consolidate businesses, right? If you remember eCommerce 101 and a couple of other businesses, I don't know where they are today. They don't show up.
Bad at managing the businesses, unfortunately.
They're what?
They were bad at managing the businesses, unfortunately.
But that's I think that's what Don's saying is like, they all won't survive.
Well, I think what you're finding is like, so Thras is the big gorilla in the room, right? They have $1 billion valuation, Thras.io. And so they're fantastic at managing businesses. I know I've consulted with their brand managers and with their leadership, and they take an approach where they'll take a market leader and then still grow it. So they are taking people who are, normally getting lower valuations because they have one single SKU that's a hero SKU. So a traditional buyer would say, oh, that's a risky business. But for them, they're looking at it as a portfolio approach. Overall, I think valuations with the competition are just going to continue to go up. And Amazon is becoming more mainstream, more business. It's just, don't sell this year if you're planning on it. It's just going to get better and better for everybody.
Yep. Joe, did you want to add something?
Well, I was going to say, I think Thras and these other aggregators have learned a lot from the previous mistakes of some of these well-intentioned ones in the past. And now what they do is they don't carry on the operators, right? They say the reason that you were successful is you had a good idea, but the reason you haven't grown beyond 2 million or 5 million is you're a poor operator. So we're going to take your product, we're going to take your idea, we're going to put together our own internal operations department, which is going to grow the brand both on Amazon and off Amazon.
Yeah, not only that, Joe, you get economies of scale, right? So like if you're operating all 40 or 400 of these businesses, now you can aggregate all of the shipping and logistics and save money in multiple ways.
Yeah, there's no
question. And so
I
think you're going to see it. I'll let you get in a second here, Eric. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a dystopia here, actually, which is that these aggregators are going to continue to buy the niche brands that have a somewhat of a moat, right? Either in value proposition or intellectual property. But then you're going to have these other areas where it's just going to be so commodified. You're going to have all these, for lack of a better phrase, the Chinese knockoffs in all those areas driving down price and just no distinction between the product lines. And you'll have these big companies that own a lot of unique, good products. And that's like this weird dystopia that's going to kind of form on Amazon.
Joe, I'm so glad you mentioned the Chinese, because I was reminded when Brandon was just talking for a second, there was this point where Jeff and I were eating in China, and we were there at the table with this guy, with the guy that was running Anchor at the time. And he said their entire process, their entire way they've grown is really to try and just be 1% better than their competition every time the cards are dealt. And I think it gets back to that idea of what you were saying. You've got the back office synergies. You've got which is an immediate cost savings. Then you've got the fact that most of these owner operators, they can't operate at scale with the best in class scalable fulfillment, logistics, marketing, all of the things that you could combine across entities and take a portfolio approach the way Brandon was saying. And I think you can really, I think there's going to be a ton of value for these companies. Particularly, a lot of people are saying, well, there's too much money in the market for it to work, but there's so many sellers. There's not nearly enough money in this to be saturated yet.
Okay, so what's that mean for the people that are listening? What's that mean, Alex?
Well, I think one thing that we're kind of missing here is when we look at a company like Thrasio, and they have $1 billion valuation, private equity money is just starting to move into this market, and it's because they're chasing yield. The rest of the economy is kind of dead. Not trying to be morbid here, not trying to be overly negative, but investment banks, private equity firms, large hedge funds are used to investing in all sorts of sectors of the economy. And essentially at the end of the day, they're raising money for investors and they're looking for 18% yields. And every time you start chasing yield, it starts to become a race for the bottom. So I think what's going to happen is what we might see is we're going to see a ton of private equity money pile in. They're going to make Thrasio look tiny because they're going to have 20, 30, 40 billion dollars. And we're gonna have the same exact problem that we had when private equity moved into retail. It's gonna destroy the brands. If you remember, there are so many brands out there that they had one store, for those in New York, we had Fairway. Fairway was a great grocery store. Then they expanded 2 locations, 3 locations, got private equity money. Now they're out of business. And we could go down the line for all these different retail groups that at the end of the day, when you only care about the margins and you only care about the metrics, and you're now running that business for outside investors, not necessarily for the user, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of brands really grow big, and the founders of those brands will sell, and then those brands will disappear over the next 2 to 5 years because of the way that they're going to be run won't be as organic as what actually built that brand in the first place. I'm trying to bring this down to what that means for the brands that are on this call. Does that mean that they're going to get more money for their brand when they go to sell? Does that mean that
future is bright.
Harder for them to compete?
Yeah. No, it's going to be better. If they launch their
money.
product successfully, they're going to get more money for their brand, and it's only going to get better. E-commerce is growing. If you're able to solve the problems that people are facing right now with launches and with the inventory restrictions and keeping your IPI score, and you can navigate it and overcome the challenges, those are just barriers to entry for new sellers anyway. So if you are determined to get past it and learn and launch and rank effectively, then yeah, all the money coming in that Alex is talking about, a race to the bottom, that's a race to the bottom for the PE firms, meaning that they have to give more valuation in order to buy our brands. And that's just going to mean that we're just going to get more money as the sellers.
Exactly. I totally agree with that.
Carlos, were you going to add something?
No, but pretty much just shorter version of what Brandon said. Future is bright. I don't want to repeat it, but that's pretty much exactly what Brandon said.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Grow right now for the next year or 2, 3 years, and then set up to sell. That's where the money's going to be. Take advantage of it. I agree, Brandon.
I think it means. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, just one consideration. If you are itching for an exit, realize that you are the expert in some of these equations. They're not all like Thrasio. And you are the expertise, and you might be able to accelerate your val with the idea that you coming on as the management part of their business, you helping them scale their business because you understand the piece that they don't. And so I agree with these guys. If you hold out longer and you're going to do a true brand exit and just give them the brand, you're good to go. But if you want to, sort of work for it a little bit harder and help them sort of scale something that you believe in, you might be able to get a higher val now.
That's 100% true. Sorry, Joe. I just want to piggyback on that with Ryan, because I've been approached by several companies that have a lot of money raised that are looking to give more upside to the founders and keep them on as a business model.
Yeah, they need the owner operator.
They need the owner operator. They're not Thras. They don't have 60 well-trained people, right? And they're not pillaging from a bunch of companies. That they need the owner operator. So they're not buying out 100% of the equity. They're owner financing and giving a nice chunk of change, but also keeping on so that the owner operator can grow it and get upside as well. So, and what Ryan said earlier is brilliant. Like once you hit a certain number of SKUs, your focus should be on building your audience and building off of Amazon, because that increases the valuation as well. You need that extra protection that Carlos talked about and that others talked about, which is, you know, you have that backup plan, you have traffic coming in as a percentage from other marketplaces as well.